Welcome everyone to the second in a series of the Walter Durham Lecture Series. I'm Grace Tompkins and I serve on the committee that helps plan these programs. And they have been so popular and well attended for the past 2 seasons, we decided to continue it. When we were asking for ideas, it came from some of you who we would select to be part of our lecture series. So this evening we have a real treat in store. Our speaker, Gratia Downs Strother, is someone I've known since she was a little girl in the Methodist Church. Just this year I found out she loves history. She's also married to Tom Strother, whose ancestors were the first people in Cottontown. Right? Farmers in Cottontown?
Yes, ma'am.
You think? Well, I bet Brady knows.
I do.
I have been given this very nice bio, so let me impress you all with her. Gratia Strothers is a Gallatin native. She has a bachelor's degree in interior design from MTSU, a master's degree in interior design from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. She has designed hospitals and corporate interiors all across the country while working with Gresham Smith Partners and Thomas Miller and Partners Architects. She was an associate professor at Watkins Institute, the College of Art and Design. She led a North American team of designers who collaborated in developing the ACT exam for designers.
No, with ACT.
Oh,
ACT
she collaborated with ACT in
I did
developing.
not create the ACT, don't blame me.
Let me tell you, I just got this 2 minutes ago. No. Anyway,
They said I had to have a mic.
she helped us develop the new exam in interior design certification for the Council of Interior Design Accreditation. Now, she now practices residential and commercial interior design and has her own firm, but when she's not designing things, she's working on genealogy and she loves history. And her assistant tonight is Tom Strother, and they are the proud grandparents of 2 grandchildren.
Parents. Parents, we don't have grands yet.
We don't have
2 children.
the
2
word.
grown children.
It looks like grandchildren, but it says grown children.
I have a grandpa. Is that good?
But the last line will let you know about her personality. She speaks 2 languages, geek and Southern.
So I'm excited to see all of you here, and I know that you all love history as much as I do. I have to give a little bit of credit where it's due. This is the Walter Durham Lecture Series, and I would not be here were it not for my dad, who graduated from high school with Walter Durham, and who loved history and read all of Walter's books and instilled love of history in me from very early on. And my mom did as well. She was the genealogist for our family, and her family and my dad's family. And so they both just, I thought all family vacations were traveling to historic sites. But I didn't know there was any other way to vacation. Literally, in all of my years growing up, we spent a day and a half on the beach, and then we were bored and had to go see a historic site. So when Tom and I married, and we were talking about going on vacation, he was like, "Are we going to go to the beach?" And I said, "And do what?" So my children started calling it the Trees and Houses Tour, and everywhere we went, we had to stop and see trees and houses houses and buildings. And Tom loves to tell the story that we visited the beach in North Carolina on the Emerald Coast over there, and we were on our way back home, and I said, oh, we just have to stop in New Bern. And of course, you all know New Bern is one of the oldest cities in North Carolina and in the United States. And I said, we just have to stop. And it was back when we had film for cameras. And I took one roll of 36 shots of my family on the beach. And I took 4 rolls of 36 shots of architecture in New Bern, North Carolina. And so Tom says that's where my priorities are, but I said, no, I was really spending time with my family instead of taking pictures on the beach. And then when we got to the architecture, bless his heart, he and the kids did their own thing for like 4 hours and let me just photograph architecture, which was wonderful, just wonderful. So I also need to thank Jane Wright and David Wright. You will see some of his artwork in this presentation. Need to thank Kenneth Thompson. Kenneth has really encouraged me in researching. Need to thank Terry Lee Martin, who has a new book out and will be speaking on Friday at 6 with the Sumner County Historical Society at the Presbyterian Church. Grew up down the street from each other, have both always loved history, always. I think we talked history from the time we were middle schoolers. So all those folks have encouraged me and helped us research, and Ms. Caper has helped tremendously in researching about the Bridal House. So Friends of the Bridal House is the organization that has participated in opening the Bridal House to the public, in collecting all of the artifacts inside the Bridal House, and in researching the family history and the property history of the Bridal House. We have a Facebook page under Friends of the Bridal House, so please look for us, and you will become familiar with events we're having at the Bridal House. Donald and Frances Brickey. Don was a descendant of Robert E. Lee. Some of you knew him, I'm sure. He also was a civil engineer who helped design the original 109 bridge. So he contributed to Sumner County history in his own way. He loved to reenact, and when he reenacted, he often played his ancestor, Robert E. Lee, and he looked a little bit like him. So this is Don back in the 1990s, and he and his wife Frances are the ones who got the house added to the National Register of Historic Places. So they built on some research that had been done by others and pulled together enough information to get the house on the National Register. After their passing, Don passed in December of 2016, and in his will, he gave the house and the 4-acre lot next to it to Sumner County to be used as a museum and a park. So in fulfilling those wishes, the county has renovated, I don't want to use the word renovated, they have restored the house. Now, we're still in the process of restoration. We need $3,500 to redo the doors because they're in a state of decline. So if you would like to make a donation, I am shameless about asking for money for the Bridal House. So when we get done tonight, should you so feel led, this is like a revival, you are welcome to make a donation. So this is a beautiful, beautiful property. I know some of you have seen the little log house that sits on the side of the road in Cottontown. It's kind of diagonally across the street from the old Cottontown schoolhouse. It's right on Highway 25, close to the intersection of Upper Station Camp and Highway 25, also known as Red River Road. So here's the little schoolhouse across the street. This is the side yard, and this little serpentine brick wall on the side is built out of the original brick from the original fireplaces. And this is the field beside the house. This barn across the street actually is not part of our property. Tom and I call him the Longhorn guy, and I can't think of his name at the moment, but you will know because there are Longhorn cattle in his field. So if you're driving through Cottontown, you see Longhorns, look across the street, and there's the Bridal House. And he, by the way, is a great neighbor for us. When I can't move something, he sends his grandson over and gets it moved for us. Oh. So this is the historic marker. So I need to give my little preface about history. We all know that when you're researching history, you find facts, and you think that's how it was. And then a few years later, you may find another fact that contributes to the breadth of your knowledge and information about that particular topic. So our knowledge of history is always changing as we uncover more and more facts and more research. So that said, the historic marker is now incorrect because we've learned some things since the marker was put up. So in 1795, Thomas Cotton founded Cottontown. That's a pretty good year. You know, there's not a date on a piece of paper that says we call it Cottontown now, and it's founded on that date, but that's pretty accurate. Thomas Cotton actually came here in 1791, and he had been a captain of the Hertford County, North Carolina militia during the Revolutionary War. That is correct. The land that he occupied in Cottontown was actually his brother or cousin John's land grant. So it was his Revolutionary War North Carolina land grant, and it was a preemptive land grant, which means that John was actually here in Sumner County before the land grants were issued. So he received the preemptive land grant, and he had 650? 640, thank you. Acres.
640 acres.
Acres. Yes. Of land in Cottontown. Actually, Captain Thomas's land was on the Stones River. And so we don't know, we haven't delved into exactly what happened with Captain Thomas's land on the Stones River. But we know that he and his adult sons and his brothers kind of made it all over Middle Tennessee when they first came here. And the marker says that his son Moore Cotton in 1819 built the house as a wedding gift for his only daughter, Elizabeth. Well, Elizabeth, as you will see, wasn't his only daughter, but she was his oldest daughter. And we believe she was his oldest surviving child. The house very possibly was given as a wedding gift to her, and she lived the majority of her adult life in the house once she married. The house is indeed architecturally significant for the size of its logs. They are unusually large, and I will show you some pictures of those as we go along with our presentation. Now, some of you think of this as the Cotton House. This is the house that the Longhorn guy lives in at the intersection of Upper Station Camp and Highway 25. And so the Bridal House is actually to the left of this when you're facing this house. And this is not actually Moore Cotton's house, but we do believe it is the original site of Moore Cotton's house. So there is a legend that Moore Cotton built the Bridal House so close to his own house because he didn't like Elizabeth's husband. Well, we think we've pretty much been able to disprove that. We know that Moore was involved in business relationships with not only Elizabeth's husband, Richard, but also with other siblings of Richard's. And they were all actually his nephews and nieces. So we think that they probably actually got along quite well. And we don't know exactly why Moore's house is so close, but it wasn't uncommon for families to live so close to each other. I'm sorry, this is creeping across the screen. That's kind of creepy. But the background is there to kind of show you a little bit of what Tennessee might have looked like when they came here. It was wilderness. It was wilderness. So the story of the Cotton and the Hobdy and the Strother families coming to Cottontown from 1791 to 1794 actually goes back a little further than 1791. Captain Thomas Cotton was the son of Thomas Cotton. Thomas Cotton was the son of Judge John Bertie Cotton. Judge John Bertie Cotton was born in 1658 on the Isle of Wight, and he was a first-generation colonist, I guess you could say, before we became the United States. And so his sons and children all went on to do kind of interesting things, but one of those was Alexander Spotswood Cotton. Alexander Spotswood Cotton's family located on the Albemarle Sound in North Carolina, and Alexander's sons became some of the first people in the United States Navy during the Revolutionary War. And so their family has a long naval tradition. Alexander's brother, Thomas Cotton, had a good-sized little family. Lazarus, we'll see Lazarus' name again, was the oldest, Captain Thomas, and John. Now, John was a really common name, and you all kind of have probably researched historic records, and there are lots of men named John. And there were several John Cottons, because all those brothers that we saw on that family tree before had sons and named them John. So we're not exactly sure which John. But we do know some things about the John Cotton who came here, and he could be this John Cotton, or he could be a first cousin John Cotton. But we know that Lazarus and Captain Thomas were brothers. We know they had a brother named John. The dates of birth kind of fit for the John Cotton who actually came here. And then they had a sister named Talitha, and a brother named Noah, a brother named Alexander, another sister named Susanna, and a sister named Jemima. Lazarus, Thomas, John, Talitha, and Susanna all came to Sumner County. So a big chunk of this family came to Sumner County. And John was the first one to come. Go back, sorry about that. So Thomas married Patience Bridgers, and he had Captain Thomas. Captain Thomas's brother John came here, we think, with Donaldson's flotilla in 1780. So we have some really interesting information about John. Their brother Lazarus shows up a little bit later, and then Captain Thomas and Susanna and Talitha and their families came in 1791. Is all of this family tree stuff just entirely too boring? I hope not. I love the family tree stuff myself. So Captain Thomas was a captain in 1776 in the Hertford County Militia. We actually have a copy of his captaincy commission. His captaincy commission that we have a copy of is dated 1780. Now, he was a member of the militia, and the militia didn't end when the Revolutionary War ended. The militia continued. In fact, it is entirely possible that Captain Thomas was the militiaman who traveled with travelers to come to their land grant in far western North Carolina, which is what Tennessee was at that time. So the state of Virginia went all the way over where Kentucky is, and the state of North Carolina went all the way to the Mississippi River. And so it was called the North Carolina Territory. It was also called, Kenneth, can you tell me, territory south of the Ohio?
Yeah, territory south of Ohio.
Territory, I got it right, yes. See, I have to refer to these people who really know this stuff. Territory south of the Ohio. And the one on the top is David Wright's lovely painting. We know that they came one of two ways. They came over land through woods that basically had a dirt trail, or they came by flatboat on the Cumberland River, or on the river, and ultimately on the Cumberland River. And sometimes they kind of came both ways, because they would get to a bend in the river and have to get on land a little while, and it was a really difficult journey. So we know that John Cotton came as early as 1780. We know that he married in 1791 in Sumner County, and that Lazarus Cotton was a witness to his wedding. And we also have Lazarus on some Sumner County records in the late 1780s, along with John. John Cotton had 640 acres on a branch of Station Camp Creek, which is where the current the house with the red brick house that I showed you is located. It was ultimately, we believe, before that house was Laura Cotton's house, and where the Bridal House was. Station Camp Creek actually runs right beside the Bridal House, and that's a description of the property. The editor's note comes from John Breer's book, and some of our best information on exactly where that was located comes from the Career and Masters book. So this is an interesting little blurb about what it was like to travel with Donaldson's flotilla. And John Cotton is actually mentioned in a recording about Donaldson's flotilla, and when they hit a boiling pot area where there were rapids in the river, a trivial accident nearly ruined the expedition. One of the company, John Cotton, who was moving down in a large canoe, had attached it to Robert Cartwright's boat. Now, ultimately, John's niece married one of Robert Cartwright's sons. So they stayed friends, apparently, or the Cartwright family and the Cotton family did. The canoe was overturned and the little cargo lost. The company, pitying his distress, concluded to halt to assist him in recovering his property. They landed on the northern level spot and were going up to the place when the Indians, to our astonishment, appeared immediately over us on the opposite cliffs and commenced firing down upon us, which occasioned a precipitate retreat to the boats. And then it goes on to talk about they lost the Jennings family, the family of Jonathan Jennings ultimately did catch back up with them, but they got separated for a while. It was a dangerous journey, and that was in April of 1780, and that is how we believe John Cotton got here. So this is a map of James Robertson's journey and John Donaldson's journey. So Donaldson came from Fort Patrick Henry on the Tennessee River and then back up and down to the Salt Lake that ultimately became Nashville. Notice Buchanan Station right here. There's Mansford Station. Here's Buchanan Station. And James Robertson came overland, went through the Cumberland Gap up into Kentucky, down past the Barren River to get to the same place. Sorry. Sorry about that. There we go. So we know Lazarus showed up. We know John married Fanny Hamilton in 1791, and then he married Jeanette Crawford in 1800. They had a daughter named Mary, and we don't have any records of John after 1800. We don't have any records of Lazarus after 1807. Captain Thomas was married to Priscilla Knight, and they had a son named Moore. They had other children as well. This is the abbreviated family tree. And Lazarus, John, and Thomas's sister Susanna was married to Richard Strother. Susanna and Richard were my husband Tom's 6 times great-grandparents. And they had a son, also named Richard Strother, their oldest son. Moore Cotton was one of the 20 or so men who fought valiantly at the attack of Buchanan Station. If you've never read about Buchanan Station, go home, look it up. The attack on Buchanan Station was, by all accounts, a miraculous event. And the only reason the settlers survived the attack was because there were 3 different Native American tribes attacking. They believe as 300 Native Americans may have attacked. There were about 20 able-bodied people who could fight in Buchanan Station. And Mrs. Buchanan became lauded across the whole western frontier because she got all of the women to reload the guns for the men, so the men could shoot continuously. So she was the original automatic loading weapon. And she was apparently quite a brave lady. And Moore Cotton actually was there at Buchanan Station during this attack. They actually had a few days' notice that it was coming. I guess you couldn't move 300 people across the frontier to attack a frontier station without somebody knowing that you were coming. So they had a little bit of advance notice. And the Creek, the Cherokee, and the Shawnee disagreed with each other about who was in charge. And it is believed that that disorganization is what gave the settlers the advantage, and they were actually able to survive. By the way, you know John Buchanan, who grew up here in Sumner County, and Buck Buchanan, who used to own PTL bookstore here in Gallatin, they are descendants of this Buchanan Station, Buchanan family. So the journey, how the rest of the Strothers came here after John, was probably across land. And this is based on maps that we know of early trails about the path that they came, to our best estimation. And we know it was a journey of at least 600 miles. We know that with the family, by the way, Captain Thomas's wife was pregnant on this journey. Wasn't that just a joy, I'm sure. And they came all the way, almost to the Albemarle Sound from Hertford County, North Carolina. They have a traditional home place there that some of Captain Thomas's cousins are still settled at. So they probably came on the Avery Trace, and you can actually go out to Bledsoe's Fort and walk a little part of the Avery Trace. If you go there with a historian and they can tell you the story, it's just a really, really cool experience to walk on that land and think about those people who made that journey. They were some pretty tough folks. So in 1794, Sister Talitha and her husband Robert Hobdy came, and they settled on a little bit north of where Beach Community is, New Shackle Island Community and the Beach School. Robert Hobdy had been a merchant during the Revolutionary War, and so he got a smaller amount of acreage. I'm thinking it was somewhere between 70 and 90 acres, and he was a blacksmith. Moore Cotton had a daughter named Betsey, and Betsey married, or Elizabeth, and Betsey married Richard Hobdy. Yes, they were first cousins, or perhaps first cousins once removed. Once again, history facts. Some historians believe that Moore Cotton was born out of wedlock to a mistress, and some historians say, no way, no how, and think that the two Moore Carters, his middle name is Carter, Moore Carter and Moore Carter Cotton were two different people, but some people believe that Captain Thomas bestowed an inheritance on Moore, and that's when he changed his last name to Cotton and actually started using the last name Cotton. So we don't know whether Moore's mom is really Priscilla or whether she is a woman with the last name Carter. We're not really sure. But we do know that Elizabeth and Richard were first cousins once removed, and I think it's best not to get too upset about that because there weren't very many people on the frontier. And we actually had several first cousins or second cousins getting married in the Cotton family for several generations. I won't mention whether or not that might have something to do with my husband's family. We can use that as an excuse, right? That's why your family's crazy. No, we joke with each other about this all the time. We, however, are not cousins, by the way. So, Sister Talitha, they called her Letha, was married to Robert Hobdy, and they had 11 children, and Richard was the baby. So Richard was actually born in 1794 in North Carolina, and then they came here, so he was an infant when they came here across land. So these ladies, I can't imagine how tough they must have been to have small little children making that cross-country journey, because I had a really nice van when my children were small, and we had iPads and all kinds of things to keep them entertained, and it was still challenging. So I cannot imagine what it must have been like. So most of their adult children actually came with them. So we know that from Edmund all the way down to Richard, we know, came to Sumner County with the Hobdy family. And the same is true of the Cotton family and the Strother family. Now, Robert Hobdy, Talitha's husband, was a blacksmith. And we know a little bit about him because we have this wonderful Hobdy family genealogist. And she actually lives in Florida, but she has shared all the Hobdy family genealogy information online, and she actually came to the Bridal House and did some genealogy work with visitors to the house and distant family members. She knows that Thomas Hobdy, Isaac Hobdy, and Richard Hobdy were infant orphans of William Hobdy, and Thomas Hobdy actually apprenticed as a blacksmith and complained that his master misused him and prayed relief. So he wasn't really an apprentice, really, he was kind of indentured. And he asked for relief from a court. 4 years later, he finally gained his freedom, his complaint was found groundless. And then Thomas Hobdy was not required of any further service and was dismissed in 1751 from another indentured servitude kind of situation. Thomas was a blacksmith, and he had a son named Robert. And he taught Robert blacksmithing. And Robert was located, this is Shackle Island, the intersection of Long Hollow Pike, and what's the name of that road? New Shackle Island Road. And so the Hobdy property, this is actually an 1870s map, so they're not shown on here, but the Hobdy property was further north up on the road from the Beach School and the Beach Church. This is Beach Cumberland Presbyterian Church. So they came here, they came across land with grown children and tiny little infants. They had to worry about food, first of all, had to, get some animals, growing their flock of animals and growing some food in the ground. And they had to fight Native Americans. They were really European invaders in a Native American land. It was mostly Native American hunting ground. We had already wiped out the buffalo, so the Native Americans were not too happy with these people who wiped out the buffalo. There were some plains areas, but most of it was woods, and they came under attack. So this is David Wright's beautiful painting, The Captives, and it illustrates what may have happened to Talitha Cotton Hobdy's husband. We know he was taken captive, he disappeared, he has no burial place, and we know he was taken captive by Native Americans. We know that John Cotton disappears. We're not certain if he was killed or taken captive, but we actually have the story of Richard Strother being killed by Native Americans. Richard, his brothers, and his father were out in front of the cabin they had already built, felling trees to build more housing. And the story is actually in the Knoxville newspaper of the day, which Jane was called, that Knoxville newspaper was the Gazetteer? Is that it? I don't remember. Jane knew it the minute I brought it up. And I have a copy of the article, and I can't find it, but it's fascinating. They were attacked while they were out felling trees, and Susanna holds open the door to the cabin, and she sees her son killed by an arrow in the yard, and the other guys are trying to get him in, and her hand was pierced and stuck to the door with an arrow. And they bring her son in and close the door and latch it with her hand still attached to it. So she had that scar for the rest of her life, but she lived a pretty good long life considering the era after that. But they had up close and personal experiences with physical danger from attack. It was a warlike situation. So Captain Thomas had lost all of these folks before Betsey was born. Betsey was born in 1802. We don't know what Moore Cotton or Betsey and Richard looked like, but we do know what Moore's younger brother, 10 years younger than him, James Allen Bugler Cotton, and his wife Mary Barham looked like. We know what they looked like because they were the wealthiest of all the children. By the way, they lived in Williamson County. Imagine that. So they were able to have their portraits painted, and so we know what they look like. We do know what some of Richard and Elizabeth's grandchildren and great-grandchildren look like as well. By the way, the gentleman on the left looks a lot like my husband's uncle, Jerry Strother. If you know Jerry, you can kind of look at that and say, yep, that genetics looks like it's there. Definitely looks like it's there. So Moore Cotton first married Polly Crawford, and they had Betsey was born in 1804. William was born in 1802. And we don't have a recorded date of death of him or any other records of him. We assume he probably died as a baby or as a child. And so we think Betsey was probably the first living child. and then Fanny, and then Hugh, and then Alexander. That name Alexander and that name Hugh again. They just keep coming up, keep using those same names over and over. So Betsey, born in 1804, they had survived the journey. They had survived, and they had built shelter. They had survived Native American attack, and Betsey was a first-generation Sumner County and a first-generation Tennessean. So I wondered why the Bridal House is so fancy. For a log house, it took a considerable extra amount of effort to build because of the size of the logs. So when you look at that, you realize that her life probably had a special significance to her father and to her grandfather. She was that first grandchild and first child born in Sumner County after Tennessee became a state, after Sumner became a county, to survive to adulthood. So she was like a whole new generation in a whole new phase of growth in our country. And I think that her father probably really wanted to give her a good start. I know that we're not supposed to imagine what was in the minds of people in history, and we certainly can't figure out what's in the minds of people side by side with us every day. So, but I think it's significant the date when she was born, and that she was that oldest child to survive. More, by the way, after his first wife passed, he married Lovey Edwards, and they had several more children. And this is Richard and Betsey. Richard and Betsey married in 1819. We believe the house was given to them as a gift at that time. And they had 11 children as well. Some of these children went on to live. By the way, this is Robert and Talitha's grandchildren, with their 11 children and grandchildren. And this is just Richard and Elizabeth's descendants all the way to today. Isn't that cool? So cool. All those people, this one little couple whose parents were pioneers. Isn't that cool? So I wanted to tell you a little bit about where some of these families ended up. And I have the wrong piece of paper. So sorry. Well, we know that several of the Hobdys, William and Robert and John, ended up in the southern Kentucky and northern Sumner County, Portland area. And one of their descendants, Ed, what's Ed's last name? Shucks, if I don't have it on the slide, I may forget the word. Anyway, he has done a tremendous volume of work on the Hobdy family. And so researching the Hobdy family, he has made super easy because he's done so much, and it's all at the Tennessee State Archives. Every single thing he's done. Bob, not Ed. Bob Law. You're right, Bob Law. And Bob Law is from Franklin, Kentucky, and he is a direct descendant of Talitha and Robert Hobdy, not of Richard and Betsey. But he's done all this great research about local Hobdys. So, Richard and Betsey lived at the Bridal House. Their two youngest children were disabled. And so Richard actually established in his will that the house would be sold at the end of Betsey's life if she should outlive him, which she did, and that the property be sold on time, bearing interest. And the interest and the income from that was used to support his two disabled children after their passing. So he thought ahead, but that is one reason the house is no longer in the Cotton family or Hobdy family. And so at the end of Richard and Elizabeth's marriage, the house was sold and ultimately transferred to Layla Mitchell Donahoe's family. She owned the house at one point. If you remember Donahoe Funeral Home, that was Layla Mitchell's husband at Donahoe Funeral Home.
Her husband's brother.
Her husband's brother, thank you, her husband's brother. And so ultimately, the house was sold from the Mitchells and came through several people down to Sumner County. So Richard Hobdy served in the War of 1812. We have his war record, and then we also have This is the census from 1850, and it describes a little bit about what he had. He had 50 acres of improved land and 80 acres of unimproved land. And then it tells about his crops. We know that he grew Indian corn. We know that he grew oats and Indian corn. Looks like it's all. And he did have some livestock as well. This is Richard's will. I won't get into the details of it with you, and it is really tedious to read the handwriting. But one interesting thing about Richard is that he was also a justice of the peace, so we have actual examples of his writing and his wording on things, which is just like listening to his voice almost. I mean, that's as close as we can get to it in this day and time. It's fascinating. Also wanted to let you know he was a slaveholder, and his father-in-law, Moore Cotton, was also a slaveholder. And we know that at the time of his wife's passing, the enslaved people that were sold at the time of his wife's passing were a woman named Harriet, who was 27, a man named Jim, a woman named Lucinda, who was 18, Ned was 15, Wilson was 14, Glasgow was, I think that's 7, and Amy was 5. Please don't be offended, but I think it's important to realize that at that point in time, he died in the 1950s. She died before 1964 because her estate was 1864, sorry, 1850s and 1864, thank you. So African Americans had not been given freedom yet and were enslaved. And in this same list, right after the human beings, is a listing of 5 head of horses, 6 head of cattle, and about 50 head of hogs, and 2 horse wagons. And that was July 23rd of 1851. So a temporary thing to realize, yes, they were pioneers, and part of what helped them be successful was the enslaved people who worked with them and helped them till the land and helped them take care of their crops. And I'm sure that having those people help also contributed significantly to Richard's ability to help his father-in-law Moore run a business of his own as a blacksmith, and serve as a justice of the peace as well. So that was an important contribution to the Cotton family and to Cottontown. This is what the house looked like before it was renovated in the 1960s. So it was in pretty bad shape. James and Martha Sherrill bought it and renovated it, and they were history lovers, and fortunately they were, because they saved the house and kept it in very good condition. This is what the interior stairs looked like as we started to renovate, and there's a close-up of that beautiful little latch, a little rope latch on the door. By the way, do you know why the stairs close? The stairs close so that you can close the family up in the upstairs to protect them from an Indian attack. So a lot of older houses do that. This is what the upstairs looked like, where there had been a bathroom, and we took out the wall and took out the bathroom and restored it to its original condition. Fortunately, you'll notice the floor is original on the second floor, and you can actually see you can see where the wall used to be, but they didn't take the floor out when they installed the bathroom. So where the toilet was and the plumbing lines that pierced through, we've actually made a little closet that wasn't originally there. The upstairs would have been all one open room, but it's still very authentic in the way it's interpreted. This is what the outside of the house looks like now, and we do still have some more work to do on it. The shutter doors are not original or authentic, and those will be taken off once the interior doors are replaced. The interior doors are plank doors, big wide planks. This is the dining room. So this is just a 4-room log house, and we have interpreted it as the dining room. We believe that once Elizabeth and Richard got going with housekeeping, they would have actually built a separate kitchen building behind this house that would have a dining room attached to it. And the upstairs of that kitchen space would have been a place for the kitchen maid, enslaved person to have stayed, possibly with her family. And over the dining room would have been a place for the older boys to have stayed. But at present, this is how we've interpreted the house, is with the dining room downstairs, much as it probably would have been when Elizabeth and Richard first married. This gorgeous, gorgeous federal dining table would have been a hand-me-down. It's from 1790, and it's the kind of thing they might have started housekeeping with. If anybody has a tea set from around 1820 or 1830, we would really, really love that. So if you come across one somewhere, we are definitely interested in that. Kenneth has donated some beautiful dinnerware for the table. We actually have more than this on there now. Cass Holly donated this table and chairs. Aside from these two pieces, most of the pieces in the house, and I'll tell you which ones are and which ones aren't as we're talking about it. Most of the pieces in the house are Sumner County furniture donated by Lee Carr Hall Groves. So if you know her, she grew up in that yellow, it used to be yellow, now I notice it's kind of taupe house that the Trout family owns on Long Hollow Pike. Red River Road. Red River Road on the right as you're going out of Gallatin. And she grew up going to Liberty United Methodist Church and Liberty schools and had relatives all over the county. And so she saw our plea on Facebook and called us and said, I have rooms of furniture if you're interested. It's all from Sumner County, all been passed down through her family. And so, of course, we were very interested. And she is a big reason why we have furniture in the house, actually. So this is a sugar desk. I had actually never seen a sugar desk in person until I saw this one. A sugar desk is like a sugar chest, and you're probably aware that sugar chests are highly centralized to Kentucky and Tennessee. There's some, northern Alabama, northern Georgia, but lots of them in Kentucky and Tennessee. And sugar was really valuable, so it was put in a locked chest. A sugar desk is particularly appropriate for this house because Richard was a justice of the peace, and so he would have had records that would have needed to be kept secure. We have beautiful little drawers inside that he could have put records in, and you close it, you could write on the top, use it as a desk, and it has a lock. So it's a really beautiful, fascinating piece. We have a little sugar loaf on top of that, and a beautiful little oil candle, grease lantern, get my words right, in this room as well. And occasionally we have reenactors. Her name is Debbie Lewis, and she came and played violin for us at one of our open houses, which is wonderful. Here's Robbie Pafford. She also, I think this was on Christmas open house last year. So this little piece, if you haven't seen one of these before, is a primitive convection oven. It has a little shelf in the middle. They have one of these at Craigfont as well, and thanks to Martha Haynes for donating this and some beds and some other things in the house. Michelle Haynes, Michelle Haynes. Can you tell I sometimes get names a little bit mixed up? Only if they're born in this day and time, not if they were born in the late previous times. So this little oven, you can put it right in front of the fireplace. It has a shelf you can put your biscuits on, and the air circulates inside of it. There's a little gap inside the back, so the cone shape makes the air circulate over your food and cooks your biscuits faster with that hot air circulating. And then you can move it farther back from the fireplace just to keep your food warm. So up close to cook it and farther back to keep your food warm. Thanks to Kenneth, we have a beautiful example of both Ambrotypes and Daguerreotypes from the mid-19th century on our mantelpieces. We don't actually have pictures of this particular family, but it is likely Elizabeth and Richard would have had possibly a few Ambrotypes or Daguerreotypes of their children or grandchildren. And we have a violin and that beautiful little Sumner County chair and a Sumner County corner cupboard. Cupboard, have you heard people call kitchen cabinets kitchen cupboards? They really were cupboards originally. Freestanding piece of furniture. And the little violin comes from a story that one of Richard Hawkins' nieces great nieces wrote about him, and she remembered her Uncle Richard as being a very happy and mild-mannered kind of person who played the violin. So we think he was kind of joyful in his life as the violinist. Possibly they might have danced around and as he played a snappy little tune. This is the stairway before we got the railing put back on it. Yes, we had to take the railing off to get furniture upstairs. So the railing, we don't know at which point exactly the railing was added to the stairs. It would not have been absolutely required to have a railing on those lower part of the stairs. Some older houses did not have that. And then you go into the other downstairs room. We have it represented as a master bedroom and family parlor, essentially. So they would have greeted guests in the room that we have set up as a dining room. And unfortunately, we have the bed in front of the door. It wouldn't have actually been that way. It would have been scooted over in the corner, similar to the way the master bedroom is arranged at Nathaniel Parker's cabin. But this gorgeous Sumner County bed has been extended to fit a modern-sized mattress because we actually used it in her home. But it is a beautiful piece, and all of our beds have rope beds. And it takes a lot of rope to lace a rope bed, actually. And we've tried to illustrate the beds in an authentic manner with feather beds, and we don't have any straw ticking underneath, though. We know that Richard gave 2 feather beds to his children in his will. They were so valuable that they were passed along in wills. So they probably also had a straw tick underneath the feather ticking or feather tick mattress. By the way, anybody know why it's called a tick? Ticking is the blue stripe of fabric that mattresses were made out of. Don't know why it's called ticking. I've researched this. If you happen to find out, please let me know. It could be because the feathers and the straw attracted ticks, or it could be that that's just the name of the weave on the fabric. But the mattresses were called feather ticks and straw ticks. And a feather bed was a really luxurious thing. If you were poor, you slept on straw, and if you were even poorer, you slept on a mat on the floor. So we have feather ticks in here, but we don't have straw ticks because we're still worried about ticks in Vermont. So going to protect this house and not let anything get to it. So the mattress might have been slightly thicker than this, but you know, you work all day in the field. This is a luxury when you get home. Some beautiful woven coverlets that Jane Wright has donated. So lots of folks have contributed to this house. Oh, this is a spinning weasel. A spinning weasel is actually not used to spin yarn. It is used to create a skein from yarn that's already been spun. So we have a walking spinning wheel upstairs in the house, and we have a spinning weasel downstairs. We have this lovely mammy's bench. And so the mom or the mammy could put the baby behind the little gate on the mammy's bench, rock the baby, hold the child in your lap, snap beans, or work the spinning weasel all at the same time. Or you could get the older child to work the spinning weasel. And you probably all know the song Pop Goes the Weasel. Well, that is actually a function of how this works. When it goes around, I believe it's 40 times, it goes pop, it makes a popping sound. And then you can pull the skein off, and that's an exact measured skein. And you would twist it up, hang it up on a nail in the rafters until you're ready to weave. Richard and Elizabeth would have probably shared a weaving house with her family, since her family was so close by. They would have had a loom somewhere in an outbuilding, and that would have likely been the purview of some of the enslaved workers on the farm. Lovely picture of Kathleen Haynes reenacting in our family parlor / master bedroom, and this gorgeous little chest right here dates to 1642, and it is actually a coffer. It's called a coffer. There's a better picture of it, and the bed, and we have a little trundle there. And that coffer is what the family would have packed all of their things in generations before in England, put on a ship to come to the colonies. And it is in remarkable condition. It is probably the most amazing museum quality piece. Almost everything in the house is a museum quality piece, but that particular coffer has been preserved remarkably well. So it's a beautiful piece. It's worth coming to the Bridal House just to see that one piece. It's fabulous. This is Robin DeVillig in our boys' bedroom upstairs. The boys' bedroom is where we tell the story of indoor plumbing of the day, which was not really plumbing. And a bed that Kenneth Thompson slept on as a young man that was passed down through his family. He has donated. And Betty Freudenthal is one of our friends of the Bridal House, and she helped rub those beds. So this is actually in the girls' bedroom. I don't have a picture of the girls' bedroom finished. I thought I did, and then I did not. But you'll notice on the second floor how big those logs are. There's a legend that's been passed down in the Hobby family and in several other families in Cottontown that says that the logs, which are poplar, were cut from Bug Hollow Road. Now, if you go to Rock Castle, there are Bug family members in the cemetery at Rock Castle that were related to the Bugs for whom Bug Hollow Road is named, and they were all early settlers of the area. The word is that right across from the Bridal House where Bug Hollow Road entered into Highway 25, it's actually been relocated over the past several decades ago. The course of the road was relocated. But the poplar logs were cut, and they would have been approximately 3 to 4 feet in diameter, because some of these logs are almost 3 feet tall, they're like 30 inches tall. So they were huge logs, cut from virgin timber, and the family legend says that they had to double hitch wagons to get the logs to the building site. Because they were so large. And the logs go all the way from one end of the house to the other, and then the windows and doors were cut after the logs were set in place. So this log is about, do you think, David, maybe 12, 13 feet off the ground? Probably? Yeah. So it would have taken a considerable amount of manpower and or oxen or mule power to lift, using a rope and pulley system, these logs this high up off the ground. So the size of the logs is really remarkable. None of us who've looked at this house, who've looked at other historic log houses, including preservationist architects, have ever seen logs this large in any other log house. So it's really, really distinctive. And we also have Mr. Bricky's Civil War cannon in the house. And Jane and I were just lamenting the other day that we can't get it back out. They actually took out a whole bay of windows to put it in the back of the house as part of the museum in this little meeting room that we have. And it does look beautiful sitting there, and it's been fully restored. It's actually a replica, exact replica of a Civil War cannon and a munitions chest after that. Now, ironically, we're not really sure who lived in the house during the Civil War, because we know the Hopty family had died out and the house had been sold off, so we haven't gotten that far with our research. If you love genealogy and you want to help, we would be thrilled to have your help in figuring that out and finding out who lived during that time. But the cannon is beautiful, and the last thing to be shot out of the cannon were Mr. Bricky's ashes in the field beside the house. We had a lovely ribbon cutting, and the county has been wonderful at supporting our efforts to promote the house. We had a gathering for children of the American Revolution. So these children are descendants of people who fought in the American Revolution, and they were among the most attentive children. We had a group of about 70 total, with kids and a few adults who were with them come for a tour. In addition to our regular open houses, we had a couple of weavers there reenacting. We had a leather worker, that's a leather worker on the top on the left, and a lady doing embroidery to kind of show the kids what life was really like at that point in time. and they were a really attentive audience. And so we have the little meeting room. We can seat about 30 at tables and chairs, and we can handle as many as 90 in a standing up kind of thing. So if you're interested in bringing a group, we can arrange a special time for a tour for a group, and we also rent a room for special events. We are going to be open on December 1st for our Christmas open house, and then put on your calendar June 8th. We're planning a big bicentennial celebration for the Bridal House. So any questions about the Cotton family and Cottontown and the Bridal House and friends of the Bridal House? Have I talked your ears off completely? I'm so sorry. You can talk history all day long. Yes?
What were the original windows in the house made of?
Well, we would assume in 1819, small panes of glass would be our assumption. Now, we know that the windows, see if I can go back to, I can just flip back through. Well, if I can get my pointer to point to the right thing. These little windows that are on the second floor, we think are an authentic original size and probably in the original locations. And the front doors have another door directly opposite, so there was airflow through the house, and that makes lots of sense. So we know the doors and these windows, in all likelihood, are original. These windows may or may not have been that big. Proportionally, from an architectural perspective, they make sense, I think. David, do you think they make sense?
I don't think so,
You don't think so?
but I don't know.
Maybe I've looked at too many renovated houses.
No, they have smaller and in finer houses, they had windows that size.
And, but small panes of glass, you think?
12 over, 6 over, whichever.
Yeah, so we have this 6/6 here, so it could have been a little bit smaller paned. And these could have been little wooden doors that opened, and they may not have even been actual windows. So we have a family log house, and our family log house, they were little wooden doors that opened, and they had a rifle slot underneath them. It dates to 1791, so, but the size is approximately that same size. Other questions? Yes, Dean?
This is a genealogy question, because I noticed that Common was spelled differently
It
earlier
is.
on. So
Yes, good
how-
catch.
How
So
did you
Rich-
know they were the same people?
Well, because they show up with the same family members in the same places, and because the same person might even spell it different, it might be spelled different in a record for the same person even. So sometimes a recorder who was employed by a government would be writing legal documents and might write it H-O-B-D-Y or H-O-B-D-A-Y. And I even found one record in Kentucky where two Hobbity brothers are living next door to each other. And the names of their families make sense, matches up with other records, so we know they were brothers. Because we know those families are all from the same family. But they actually spelled it Lobdy, L-O-B-D-A-Y. So, Ms. Cahert tells me that name spelling actually didn't become important until World War I, because prior to then, people lived close enough to relatives somebody knew them, and so they might spell the name phonetically different at different times. And Richard Hobbity actually spelled his name, when he wrote his own name, he spelled it H-O-B-D-A-Y, but then he also spelled his mother-in-law Patience's name, P-E-R-C-H-A-N-C-E, I believe, like perchance instead of Patience. So I was reading a record that he wrote that had her involved in it, and it was completely not spelled like the name Patience is actually spelled, and the way that her name is spelled on other records. So, but other of Richard's siblings, and in fact Elizabeth herself, didn't keep the A, and they spelled it H-O-B-D-Y. And descendants to this day spell it both ways.
Now, there's an Elizabeth Hobbity so I'm
Yes.
sure that.
She is, she's a State Farm
Yes,
agent.
farmer's agent.
Yes, I go to church with her and her parents, and they are descendants. Her dad is a descendant of, I believe, William. William lived in Portland,
Mhm.
a descendant of William, and they actually, his ancestors are from Portland. So, but he's traced his family history all the way back to Toledo.
That's Matt's family.
Yes, and Matt Hobden
He's
lives
active
in
in
Hendersonville, is also a descendant as well. And Ryan, Hugh Bakers are descendants of Moore cotton, correct? So the Bakers are descendants of Moore. When you look at the Cottons, we literally, on ribbon cutting day, we had cousins coming out of the woodwork. Because there are lots of descendants, because they had so many children. And those children had so many children. Yes?
Couple questions, and I'll tell them to you first, and then you can answer. Original hearthstones, mantles, brick,
The mantles and the hearths are not original at all.
okay.
So those were completely, you saw the picture of what the house looked like. This chimney was gone completely when the Sherrills bought it. So they built this brick patio in the front and rebuilt the chimneys. But the mantles, I think the mantles are probably authentic, if not original.
They are the original.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
and my second, family burial plots around the area?
there are 3 that are in Cottontown where Hobdys and Cottons are buried. Richard Hobdy, the man of the house, is buried with his father-in-law's people at that brick house. There's a little cemetery right there on the road on Highway 25. And when you pull into the driveway of the brick house, it's right there on your left. And Richard is buried there and has a tombstone. Elizabeth, interestingly enough, does not have a tombstone, and nobody knows where she's buried. I think Elizabeth is buried beside Richard, but in his will, he didn't stipulate burial expenses for her. And so it's possible she was buried without a tombstone. And she's not in the other Hobdy family cemeteries and Cotton family cemeteries in Cottontown. We know that she lived her last days actually with she had a step sibling who was a boarder. Her oldest son stayed with her, and then her youngest son, who was disabled. Her oldest son ran the farm until she passed. And her youngest son stayed with her until she passed. And then he actually went under guardianship with Josiah Walton, who also had land in Cottontown, and was actually the executor of Richard's will. So, and she also had, she had a step sibling who was a boarder. She had her oldest son, her youngest son, and then she had a cousin who was also a boarder. So, or may have been a nephew, actually. So she actually was had boarders in the house with her as she was older, probably to help take care of her and also help take care of the property and help financially as well. But we don't know where she's buried. And her children are buried in some of the the Hobdy children, there's a Hobdy cemetery in White House, and there's one in Portland. There are some Hobdys buried in Portland. And those are the only ones who are buried close by of Cottons and Hobdys.
That cemetery next door was restored by Larry Gribbons. He's the one that belongs.
Larry Gribbons is a Longhorn guy. Yes,
I
thank
thought
you.
his name.
Thank you.
His wife's name is Charlotte.
Charlotte is his wife, yes, Larry and Charlotte Gribbons. And they have, Tom and I cheered when they bought that place. They've added on to it and modernized, but they did keep the original front part of that house that dates to
1840.
1840. I gave
General
you the
Tyree
footnote.
Harris Bell.
General
Tyree Harris Bell.
Tyree Harris Bell. That Victorian porch is not original, right?
Wow.
So,
They,
but it has beautiful paneling in the parlor, built-in paneling and built-in storage, kind of similar to some of that built-in paneling at Rock Castle. It's quite lovely, and he's preserved part of that original character at the front of the house. But he preserved all 160 acres of the land that he bought. So we were thrilled to see all of that saved and kept in one piece. It's nice.
Do we know whether Red River Road or Highway 25, does it follow its
Original path?
original path roughly?
No. I have, let's see, if I can get it to come up. I actually have a map.
Well, Station Camp used to come that way to this house.
I think I'll have to, let's see.
At the point it went through Cottontown, would it have been in front of this house?
Highway 25 was, but Highway 25 actually curved into Upper Station Camp.
Upper Station Camp came out next to this
It-
house.
It followed, Upper Station Camp didn't make a square with Highway 25. It actually kind of curved, and it actually went, when you're looking at the Bridal House, it went to the left-hand side of the Bridal House. So it actually followed the curve of Station Camp Creek. So, yeah, it actually followed that path. And it intersected Buck Hollow Road right there in front of the Bridal House, was an intersecting road as well. And that roadbed is actually still there, and it's probably one reason the Bridal House didn't get flooded a few years ago when they had the big flood in Cottontown, because that roadbed filled up with water and kind of protected the Bridal House, because it's kind of a low, flat roadbed. So it's still there. You can come and walk it if you can brave the brush to get over to it. Other questions?
How would they go upstairs and to avoid the engines? What would keep the engines from setting fire underneath them?
Well, they could have set fire underneath them, but they could tuck the children up there and close the door and lock the children away, is a common pattern in frontier houses, frontier log houses at that time. And that's another reason the master bedroom was downstairs, so the parents could hear any kind of danger before it got to the children.
We have the rooms reversed because the bedroom should be where the dining room hall is.
Yes, I forgot to say that, Kenneth. We've actually got it reversed because there's only one place we can fit the bed, and we didn't want to,
And the corner cupboard.
and the corner cupboard, and we didn't want to modify the bed to make it its original size, because it's beautiful yet fragile, like it is. So,
Well, I want everybody to know that our fearless leader is Jane White.
yes, yes.
She's chairman of the board, and she's been behind all of this, so.
She keeps everybody organized and on track and does a phenomenal job, and keeps Winwood going at the same time, and so can't say enough good things about Jane. She's really kept everybody organized.